another man can physically overpower me or take me, there's no way I'd be able to control my emotional world either. Right. And because to me, that doesn't have as much power as being able to physically feed another person.
Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. Now, no pressure, Sulonda, but if this doesn't become one of the most listened to True Man podcasts ever, I'm going to wonder if I'm doing something wrong. Now, listen up, men. If you want to learn how to better communicate with the women in your life, and who doesn't, or you should want to, you're going to love this podcast. So, welcome my guest today, Sulonda Smith. She is a renowned communication expert, transformative speaker, and a specialist in human behavior. Sulonda has over 25 years of experience in her mission to unravel the mysteries of better relationships, and she's dedicated to helping men regain their superhero status in their relationships, fostering loyalty, respect, and trust. So I'm pumped up for this. Sulonda, how are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, Mike. How are you? It's
Uh,
so fun being here. Thank you for the
it
invite.
is. This is so interesting to me. I love it when I get a woman's perspective on the podcast. So I can't help but ask how you even, get started in this. And I read in your bio that you grew up with 7 brothers. So I'm guessing that must be a clue as to you knowing a little bit something about how men operate, right?
Yeah, just a little bit, just a little bit.
So talk about that. What inspired you to help men
Mm.
gain better clarity and understanding around communications?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you said, 7 brothers was the start of it. I got the locker room talks that probably I shouldn't have as a woman, and I got the hardcore heartfelt talks, that a sister can provide. And I got to thinking about my own relationships at that time and how I was doing things wrong, doing things right, or just didn't have a clue. And in the end, I found that I was a common denominator when relationships weren't working well, especially with comparing them to my brother. So that's where the story begins. And as a psychotherapist, now a coach, in the last 15 years, I've had more men voluntarily come for therapy. Like therapy is the end thing, it's trending now, and they would show up with the same questions.
I like how when it's cool, they show up. Okay.
Yes,
Come
right.
on,
So
man. All right.
come on in, like, I got you, we can do this. And so the same questions sparked me to think about, okay, well, if men who are willing to come to therapy are having these issues, and plus my brothers and all the other men I know, what about those that don't quite like therapy, but still
Mm,
want some help and support? And then
mhm.
that's the gap that I want to fill in with the coaching and the courses and the talking and the training. So my heart just really goes out to men and the struggle, because even providing couples therapy, I can sit and watch the men's faces as they cringe a lot, right? And they think they have no support,
Mm.
first as a woman, and then they find that I'm not judgmental, I'm not biased, and I'm just as much on his side as I am hers. So that's where this all came about. And then more men started seeking me out individually.
What makes a man cringe? What do you see that makes a man cringe?
Oh, okay. So if you could picture this, we're sitting on the sofa, right? I'm in my chair, they're on the sofa.
Uh-huh.
And she says, he never does what I ask him to do. That's one cringe. Or, and he wonders why I don't want to have sex with him. Or, I just feel like I wanna be pissed off all the time. So, this was when I see that face, or when he sinks into the couch, or when the arms get crossed and he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm done, I'm finished," you know? And so I have to go in and say, "Well, okay, I hear you, and let's figure out why that's happening." And then I go into talking about the biology, the physiology, the physical, the psychological, the emotional. All of these things are factors to why it appears like men and women shouldn't be together. But they're very complementary if we learn
Yeah.
how to work with the other gender.
Isn't it funny? And some of that's maturity, right? I mean, you
Yes.
just learn over in time. People ask me quite a bit, well, why do you work with men? Well, I'm qualified, right? And
Yes.
I kind of feel like, that I've learned a thing or two over the years that has helped me, especially from the area, and I'm curious,
Mhm.
if you see this in men, although I feel comfortable, I know the answer. You know, it's those traumas, it's those hardships, it's those challenges that men go through that they bury deep down in their soul,
Mhm.
hoping that they never have to talk about it. But by gosh, doesn't it always come out in relationship?
Yes.
So, what do you see in that area, especially from couples counseling? Are men forthcoming about those things that zapped them when they were young and now that they're staring difficulty in the face and they gotta do something?
Very good question. Yes, and it takes a while. In my particular couples counseling, when I was providing that, I had a step process. So we'd start with commitments, we start with your needs, like where they are now, where they were
Mhm.
a long time ago, your shortcomings and non-negotiables, and we talk about what's getting in the way and what's been helpful and how we can fix it. Once they get used to talking, like literally talking
Yeah.
about the issue, right? Their brain is registering, saying, "It's really okay. You're safe. Nobody's judging. Nobody's trying to control you." Then we can get to the place where they talk about the childhood traumas and things that they believe may have affected them. And how I phrase that question is, what happened in your past that you think leads you to behave the way you do today? And the thing that you're thinking that you don't want to say is what I want to hear.
Now come on, that's gotta draw a cringe.
And it does, like, they'll go, "Okay." But because
Mm,
they've already practiced being open and they've learned how to exchange without feeling beat up in the session and at home, because I'll have to say sometimes couples would go home and one partner will go in, "Well, I can't believe you said that in that session. How you never said that before," and then the person doesn't wanna come back, so it's all of the outside things that happen too with therapy. But he gets more comfortable, and I think with me particularly finding that there's someone, even I just happen to be a woman, finding that there's someone who can listen without the judgment and makes him feel like he's failed, but reassure him that he's
yeah.
on the right track is key.
In your experience, what have you seen men when they really open up and really get in touch with their heart? I like to say I help men get out of their head and into their heart, which is
Yeah.
not an easy place to get to, but when men are vulnerable in that way and they really open up, kind of unleash some of that baggage, so to speak, what do you see happen?
The first session is always they fill it up with just dumping. It's like they literally, like, 'cause they
Yeah,
stop, like, 15 minutes in, and they'll say, "Wait, am I doing this right?" Like, there's no specific way to do it. You've been holding on to these things for a very long time, you haven't had a place to put them, and now that you have somewhere to put them, to let them out and talk about them without the judgment, that's what's happening. It's all coming up and coming out, so you're good. First sessions, they just go for it, and it's usually filled with, "Well, this happened, and I never, healed from that, or I never fixed that." And then after that, they get more comfortable talking about it, and for me personally, I don't stay in the feeling too long about it. I move out of that and start working towards solutions, and in the solutions, there's a different behavior or different reaction or a task I might give them that they will practice that overrides that fear or that doubt that lingers back in the subconscious mind.
what's an example of that? Just out
Of
of curiosity.
like, the
Something you might
actual
u
an example of actually, like, what that process looks like, or
well, yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
maybe an example of a creative solution you might come up with to help somebody heal from the past and begin
Mm.
to think about, what lies ahead.
Oh, yeah, yeah, very good question. I start with talking about it from the perspective of that person having control or having a choice that they wanted the situation to go differently, and
Mm,
not to feel guilty for not having the strength or the knowledge to overcome whatever that event was. So literally thinking of themselves in a different way is what starts the process of healing. That's not your fault. Like, you can't control everything, and because you can't doesn't mean you failed. Right? You still have power, you still have the ability to fix things, just as certain parts of your life maybe you didn't know how to yet. So you can't beat yourself up for that because that's what we're all here for, to learn at a
Yeah.
certain place, right? Mike, like you said, like you work with the head and the heart. And it's so important because between those two travel points, so much stuff gets,
There's a
piled
lot
in.
going on.
I mean it's like, okay, can I just get a clear path so I can hurry up and see what this is really about?
Yeah.
And then I can just fix it and then it'll be over. But as you know, for many men, that doesn't happen. They get stuck. Like women too, they just get stuck. But that's the first part is restructuring or rewiring their belief around the event that happened to give them that power back and to see where they can change it now. That's most important than really what happened in the past.
I think that's so important, and I think, it's also important for me to insert here. Now, recording this, and ironically, I was looking at my calendar, I didn't even tell you this. This is gonna be out, February 15th. Imagine that, right around Valentine's Day. Pure luck on that one. But what I think's important here is that, when I really first started getting in touch with my heart, when I had been moving in that direction, but when I had a real kind of an epiphany moment was in the spring of 2019. So as this podcast is coming out, it's now 2024. And what's amazing about that is I still think about everything that I went through in that moment, the things that I was working on, and I'm still unpacking it in a very good way. And I say that to say that much of the work is doesn't I suppose if you're lucky, it happens overnight or it happens in a week or maybe a month, but it doesn't always happen that way. And I think this is the important thing because men become impatient.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody does, but I mean, men can be really impatient on this deal, but this really takes a lot of hard work over a period of time, doesn't it?
Yes. It does, and I have seen men who decided to just wake up one morning and be done. Like, just a little side story, like, my grandfather, he was 91. He was smoking
Mm.
cigarettes when they weren't filtered since age 11. Now, you know,
Guy had some
that's
good genes.
right? So, at 91, he wakes up one morning, he says, I think I'm done smoking." And he never picked up a cigarette then. Now, he passed, made his transition about 4 years later, and he would joke on his bed, he said, "I guess I shouldn't have stopped smoking." Like, that kept him alive,
Right.
right? He could joke about the transition. But I have had some men wake up and just say, "'Cause I can't live that way anymore. Like, it's not okay." I have this thing that I believe, and that is men are not responsible for women's happiness. Contrary to what men are taught, they're not. And especially if you and I are talking about heart space
Yeah.
and, being voluntarily vulnerable, that's how I refer to allowing somebody into your space because you have control to also push them out
Yeah.
or release them, is everybody's responsible for their own happiness. And when you're happy, all you can do is add on to it. No one should ever feel the burden of making somebody else happy because it's a state of mind. That's just my belief. Some people might disagree, and that's okay too. But that helps the men I work with realize that this is bigger than just the formalities or the old tradition of carrying a relationship the way it was 40 years ago or 100 years ago and so forth. The tradition is only something that works in the present time that helps people function to the best of their ability. And
Mm.
traditions change over time, and you can make your own traditions.
Yeah, I mean, you think about over the years and I think, you could look at TVs or movies or whatever and, the Leave It to Beaver world where the mom stayed home with the kids and then
Mhm.
dad went to work and then came home and read the newspaper and all that kind of funny it's kind of funny to look back and reflect on it, but, you transition into this world where there was a short period of time where I was a stay-at-home dad and my wife went off to work. Now, that's just complete,
Mhm.
role change, and, that does take a lot of adjusting. I adjusted to it okay, but in a man's mind, I always say to people, when you meet somebody, there are 2 things that come up. 1, what's your name? And then, what do
Mm.
you do? And then we begin to try to figure out who this person is based on what
Mhm.
they do, whether they're
Yeah.
if you're an attorney, you're like, "Oh, this guy probably drives a Mercedes
Mercedes
Benz," and
Benz.
if you're,
Mhm.
if you garbage on a daily basis, you might go, "Well, maybe he's got some kinda Honda or Toyota sitting in his." And so you
Mhm.
just this is what we do, we make these assessments, and, what's interesting is, like you said, men are not responsible for a woman's happiness. And I think that's an important thing to touch on because somehow over time, whether by tradition or just, whatever, I think a lot of guys think that that's the case.
Mhm.
And maybe they're not doing the work on themselves and their wives are happy or the relationship's not working because
Yeah.
am I hitting on something?
That's it. You got it. Yeah. You got it. You're right. Men typically have been told she needs to be happy in order for you to be happy. What's that saying? Happy wife, happy life?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Oh,
too
you
is
don't like that one. I
no, I
see I
don't like
see
that.
by the head shaking. You're like, "You don't
No.
like that one."
No, it puts so much pressure on men to perform in a certain way that's not really natural to who he is, not in comparison to
Mm,
all other men. So, many men I work with, one of the things without fail comes up is how do I be a better man for her?
mm, mhm.
And how do I just be a better man, period?
Yeah,
Like how do I be in the world, do my masculine thing of, selling and pushing and getting this and executing that, which are masculine qualities. And when I come home, when I cross my threshold, how can I be in peace and harmony and receivership in exchange, which are feminine qualities? And when I explain this to men to say both men and women have masculine and feminine qualities,
mhm.
has nothing to do with gender. It's a trait. Both are needed to really live a fully balanced, happy, loving life, right? But instead, we're emulating what we see on TV, in the
Yeah,
music, on YouTube, on whatever platform, and what we saw our parents do, we now do by default. Or if it was a harsh condition, we might tell ourselves, I'm never doing that.
yeah,
So it just
yeah,
depends. But in some way, we've been affected by our past and we don't realize how that dictates how and who we are in our relationships today.
yeah, I see this all the time. So, the question always is, how can I make that shift?
Mm,
If I didn't like the way, my dad did it, but I wanna be a better man, how can I make that shift?
mhm,
And this is something that I think about quite often because, you know, again, I commonly say something along the lines is, I help men be better men. Well, I'm helping guide them to be better men. I like to think that they're figuring out what that means and how they define it along the way, of course.
yeah.
How can men be better men?
Mm, this is such a great question.
I know. I know.
And two, I'll answer the question, and I am curious with how you convey that to, your listeners and the people you work
Mhm.
with, because people have different perspectives. And
Yeah.
me as a woman, if I were to say to a man and a person how to be a better man, is first be honest with what you can do and what you can't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because what I find is men will say they can do something and they can't because they don't want to feel like a failure or they don't want to hear the partner or person nag that they can't do it. They just don't want to feel like they can't,
Yeah.
right? They want to be the superhero, which is great. Also, being the superhero means you admit that there are certain things that you can't do, and that really is okay. And how you help other people, and this is a big one I tell men, how you help other people sometimes is admitting something you can't do so it can be done properly. That's way bigger than trying to do the thing and then you feeling bad and frustrated because you couldn't complete the task. So helping sometimes is stepping aside.
Yeah.
That's a big one that I find for men that and it's hard for them to grasp, or they'll ignore that thing that was asked of them and try to put it off as long as possible instead of just dealing with it or admitting they don't know how to do it. So this is a new time for men. Like men
Yeah.
are different. They're different than what they were yesterday, and they're even changing even more and evolving technology just with time, just however your origin is or the reason why men are changing, they really are changing. But I tell you what's hilarious, what's was still common. My 7-year-old nephew comes over on Fridays, and he made a tent, a fort in the living room. And when I said, "Okay, it's time to go, you have to clean up." And, he gave me all these grumpy faces and stuff. I said, "You have to put things back when you get them, put them back where you got them after you use them." And so I said, "Did you hear what I said?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What did I say?" He said, "Noma nama numa nama nama nama."
Okay, of course. That's what we all hear. Yeah.
Exactly, and I cracked up because that's exactly what came to my mind. Even grown men hear that from women, you know?
We do. Yeah. Or
Mhm.
if you have hearing loss like I do, it's a legitimate what did you say again?
Yes, yes.
They really get tired of me saying, "What did you say?" And it is legitimate, by the way.
Yes, not always the case, but I mean, that's what happens. And two, while I help men and teach them what to say to women using scripts and tailored scripts, I do believe that women should also learn about men and how they function and how they tick and what to say to them. I used to teach women also. We had workshops for them. And I would teach them what to say and how to say it so that they can get what they're looking for from men and not ask the same question several times. Or be frustrated
That
because
has
he's never
never
answered the
happened to
question.
me.
I wanna know your secret.
I may be fibbing a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll tell you what I talk about quite a bit with men really comes down to a couple of words and you mentioned identity that really ties into it is this idea of just being authentic and vulnerable. I think is critically important to men being in touch with this masculine world that we live in because you can very easily, and this happened to me for a while. I went through this struggle of what the heck is my identity? Who even asking, from a faith perspective, who is my identity even in? Like, you just really struggled for a while. And, I think for many men, the challenge is, you know, this whole idea of, and I heard this a lot for many years in the sales and marketing world that I was in, kind of fake it till you make it, which, leads you to wearing a mask and not being authentic and not being real. There's a tremendous amount of danger in that because some people can actually learn to become successful that way, or they act differently at work than they act at home, or they act differently at church than they act, all these different things. And I think this idea of, this false identity that false self that we carry around is a very real thing. And so I'm talking more and more about being authentic and vulnerable. And it sounds very common sense, to be honest with you, but there's huge challenges in that for many, many people.
Mm,
And I'll say men. Am I?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think there's many, like I said, there's many reasons. It could be like going back to your household. How was that dynamic with your family? What were you taught just by watching? And what were you taught verbally that
Yeah.
you became that? I think it's maybe the traumas that you've experienced just in life general, getting kicked off the baseball team
Yeah.
or like your first girlfriend being stolen from you. There's so many reasons. It could be your beliefs about who men and women are and what roles they play and what you've been told about them,
Yeah.
and also this idea that I'm a man and I should be able to handle everything. And inside knowing they can't, but dare not show anybody that they can't because then they'll lose their status. I remember a client, he was 45, maybe 42. And when he said to me, he said, "Solanda, my grandfather told me the day I realized that another man can physically beat me or beat me up, I've lost power."
Oh. Oof.
I thought that was profound. I was like, wow. And I said, "How does that relate to you mentally or emotionally?" He said, "Well, if another man can physically overpower me or take me, there's no way I'd be able to control my emotional world either." right? And because to me, that doesn't have as much power as being able to physically feed another person. Now, mind you, this person
Wow.
did several tours in Iraq
Yeah,
and was
okay.
in the Secret Service forces, you know,
Alright.
but still a very vulnerable man, right? I mean, he would cry during sessions
Mm,
because of what he was there for, which had to do with his wife. And he showed his vulnerable side in that space, and that was the only place he showed it. And I really wish that there were other places that men felt accepted to be able to show that and not have tradition thrown in their faces.
wow, you just said a lot there. Felt accepted. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Why don't I'm gonna put it say it this way, why don't many men feel accepted to show emotions? I mean, now, I kinda grew up still in that era of,
Mhm.
okay, well, if you're playing ball and you fall down, just rub it out. Don't say ouch, man
Mm,
up, right?
mhm.
Why don't we feel safe?
Yeah, good question. And for the record, I was also told to just get up and
Yeah,
keep going. As a girl, just
yeah.
just just spit on it and keep going. Like, okay. I find men who feel like they have a lot of pressure put on them from a very young age. They
Mm,
are conditioned to believe that they should be able to handle everything, everything. And
yeah.
when that seeps in and it becomes who you are, like you said before, you have all these things that shape who you are, that shapes you. And now that you're older, there's a miscommunication because your brain is telling you, hey, you should be able to handle this. And then the other part of your brain is saying, but I can't. So how do I marry those 2? How do I make those 2 work together to
Yeah,
be
and we
okay?
can't admit that we can't.
Yeah, you can't. Oh,
Yeah.
don't do that. Oh,
Mm-mm.
don't do that.
No.
If you do that to a woman, especially if she's grown up with the understanding that men are supposed to be strong and fix everything, and that's why Disney, okay? Disney, and we'll take it back to just Snow White. That was the beginning, like my remembering or recollection of when a man showed up on screen. He hardly said anything. He just smiled, and all he had to do was just come and save her. And then, she was like, "Oh, you got me for life. Like you're my hero." And in her emotional space, like they dive deep into her story of who she is, but for him, there was never a story. And I truly believe that women grew up thinking because of the conditioning and watching this over and over again, that that is how a woman is supposed to respond and treat a man. And he was taught the same thing too.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about Snow White from
Mhm.
that perspective, but I'll take you back further, Salon. One of the things then that comes up quite a bit in a lot of the men's groups that I'm a part of is you can circle all the way back to the book of Genesis in the Bible and
Oh. Mm,
see passivity of Adam
mhm.
and knowing, right, that Eve's well, she's got that apple in her hand and, ooh,
Wow.
doesn't say a word. And
Yes.
so, I look at it and think, well, okay, there's some degree of passivity that is genetically built into us men to a
Mm,
large degree.
mhm.
And you can go all the way back. So there you go. I one-upped you there. I went back a little further, but I hadn't thought about the Snow White thing.
Mm,
But all of those things play a role in, when we're seeing this, the movies, I even grew up with music videos,
mm,
sports. My kids now are like, "What is that?" Just all the things that we see that were portrayed to us. Every once in a while, I'm, like, flipping it around and, like, you may see a show like, All in the Family on, and you're like, "How
mm,
in the world did Archie Bunker ever get on telly?" That would never fly for, like it wouldn't even be a thought in
mhm,
today's world, but, just all of these things, I think about the Huxtables, watching the family grow up, and, just, all of these things create pictures in our head.
yeah.
And in some cases, it's bad, and in some cases, it actually puts pressure on men to perform higher level that may not be attainable. I mean, not all of us. I believe that both the Huxtable parents were doctors, if I remember right on that show. So, I mean, not everybody lives in a household like that. What a great show. Anyway, but I think all of these pictures that we get in our minds, many of them Hollywood created, probably not the best direction to look at. Um, you know, but Hollywood creates what Hollywood creates. They create these, again, I go back to false pictures in our minds
Mm.
on how we should perform as men that we can't live up to in some cases.
Absolutely, yes, and I refer to yeah, I just kinda talk about my clients because that's my point of view and my reference. As
Yeah.
a woman, I can give you my point of view, but because I'm hearing it from men, I always just like to say, "Well, what I'm hearing," "what I'm experiencing," because it's important for men to know other men are really having these challenges and opportunities for
Yes.
growth, you
Well,
know?
and
Mhm,
that's exactly why, when you reached out to me on the podcast, I thought, well, then now this is a fantastic thing to talk about and get a perspective, a woman's perspective on what, you know, predominantly I'm going to have, men listening, in my audience. And so I think that it's important for them to gain some understanding. Okay, if I'm going to be the best man that I can be, what are women thinking? What are women seeing? What are, and
yeah.
my personal opinion is, and from talking with a lot of different women is, well, first and foremost, men, they they don't want you to be that passive Adam.
Yes, that's
They
why I
don't want
snickered.
that. That's not that's not a good thing,
Yes,
okay?
we're thinking the
You
same thing.
know they want somebody who's got a little fight in them, a little fight
Mhm,
in them for them too. They're not
mhm,
just y you as the guy.
mhm.
Y They a woman wants to know she's being fought for and she's cherished and she's loved. Am I right? Am I on to it?
Absolutely. Nope, you got it. You hit it right on the head. Absolutely.
So why do we do such a crummy job of doing that?
I think it's education. If I had things my way, I would want just like when we show up and learn our alphabet or our numbers or that 0 actually exists, that how you respond to a relationship is just as important. You understanding women and men is just as important. And we don't do that. We just kinda we throw ourselves into these
Yeah,
relationships and hope for the best instead of going in knowing who we're working with from a biological design and then from a personality design and then from a, "Oh, you had these bad experiences? Well, how can we mend those and really create the life we want?" Like the ultimate relationship adventure.
yeah,
That's what people should be after. But we get stuck in all of the muck and miry of judgment of
yeah.
ourselves, of people judging us, of not feeling like we're doing it right, and somebody constantly telling us we're not doing it right, like our partners. Many women think that telling a man that he's not doing something right consistently is gonna get him to do it right. No, that does not work, and telling him 7 different ways does not work, or you
It
ignoring him or
it
withdrawing him in
drives
the
men away,
bedroom.
doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just doesn't work. So we need a better education. And because why I love your podcast because it's about loving yourself,
yeah,
accepting you for who you are, and then matching with someone who can see that in you just as much and who are at peace in these other areas that you're continuing to grow. Or if you have that person already, maybe helping them also understand how important it is for self growth. Like I believe we're all on
yeah.
this path moving forward together. And it just so happens when something happens to you, the other partner is there to help you, but not carry it for you or get in the way of you learning about whatever that is that seems to be an impediment in that moment. That's what we're here for in relationships to bring out our best selves. That's how you be a best man and a best woman.
Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people kind of reverse the order. Well, if I get in this relationship, maybe that'll be everything that I need. Well, the statistics don't indicate
Mhm.
that that's the case. And actually, when you look at divorce statistics, I mean,
Mm.
it gets worse. If you get married a second time and you haven't done the work on you, the chances are that marriage is gonna end quicker, and the third one, even worse. S
Yes.
I mean, the statistics are out there, and what that tells us is that, most people think that they'll get in a relationship and everything will be okay, and that's simply not the case. We what you and I know is that you gotta do the work on you, and
Mhm.
then you can have the best relationships. Because if you don't love yourself, you can't give it out. It's just
No.
it's almost not possible. And I agree with you on the education, and that's something that people ask me all the time. Well, Mike, what's your goal? Where are you headed with this? And
Mhm.
and a lot of it is education, 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 because I feel like as men sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I'm trying to create a platform that exists where we can get that out there in a big bold way for guys to be their best masculine self. Gosh, I feel
Mhm.
like there's so many things that we could talk about, and I wanna make sure that that if there's something that you'd like to share, with the audience before we wrap up that maybe we didn't touch on that you think of incredible value, please, Salonda, have at it.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Like, I could talk to you for hours and we can go back and forth. This, would be great. There's so many things, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would say like a tool that I teach my
Mm,
men, 2 tools. One is if she's talking for a long time and you haven't figured out what she wants yet, because most men listen to fix or for praise, okay?
mhm.
And if she hasn't gotten to it yet, just gently say, "Okay, wait, babe, let me jump in for a minute. I wanna make sure I got this. Is that okay?" Right? And by
I
saying,
love
"Is
it.
that
Yeah,
okay?"
yeah.
You're drawing in her attention to right now she's realizing she's going off on the tangent. And you have 2 options there. You can either say, "Okay, as a man, most men, I got about 2 minutes of capacity to really be with you." Right?
I love
Um,
it. Yeah.
right, I got about 2 minutes, and it's not
Mhm.
personal.
Yep.
Or, "Do you want me to fix this problem? I hear you talking. Is it something you want me to fix, or do you just want me to listen?" That'll help him relax more and not feel like he's pressured to try to figure out what she's talking about and get frustrated because she hasn't gotten to the point, okay? I find that to be a very useful tool, for him when he just feels overwhelmed. The other one is, as soon as she gives you something to do and there's a deadline, I don't care if it's the same day in 4 hours, put an alert in your phone that goes off that says, "Fix doorknob for babe."
Yeah, I love it.
Right? So that it interrupts what you're doing because most men are single focused. Like, I only see that deer, I'm gonna get that deer.
Yeah.
I don't see the moon, I don't see the purple flowers, I don't see the bunny, I see the deer.
The game's
Eh
on at 2 o'clock. I mean, really? You
yeah,
wanna
like what else is there to think about? Like, whatever you're telling me, I don't like my nephew, "Nama, nama, 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 nama," I don't hear
Uh-huh.
anything else that you're
Yep.
saying. And it's important for her if you wanna keep that connection, and I love what you said earlier about being proactive, the things that you do now instead of waiting for things to fall apart, and then you're like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. How do I save this?" And hopefully it's not coming with a severity of her wanting a divorce or leaving with the children or taking your money, but it's
Yeah.
more so that you can say, "Let me fix this doorknob. It'll take me 15 minutes." Let me do that. So now she's happy. She's feeling more connected to me. She wants to be with me more. And we get to be in the bedroom more, right? More bedroom action because I'm following through with these things she's asking me to do.
15 minutes for a doorknob. See, I double everything because I'm not very handy. But what you made me think of, so I have to ask this question.
Mhm.
Is there Okay, we get down to the 4th quarter of a game and there's 2 minutes to go. Is there anything that a guy can do to prevent that question of, "Can you do this now?" from coming at them? I mean, the
Yes.
game's almost over.
No, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. And that's that pre-talk. Babe, the game's coming on. I know, you want attention probably, when I'm into the game, but like this really helps me feel calm and focused. And then I can get more done for you later. If I can just have my time to watch the entire game, even when it seems like it's ending and it's done and
Mm,
there's no more thrills, that's the thrill. It's when it's ended And that's when I'm most excited, and I'm excited enough that I'm excited for you. Can you give that to me? And if you do that, I will. It's important to do the I will afterwards because now you're training her to believe that you're going to complete the task that she needs, or you're going to come back to her with whatever she tried to interrupt you with. So now you're training her brain to believe this. And in the future, her trained brain will know, oh, the game's not over yet. Let me just wait instead of interrupting. It's rewiring. I know it's work in the beginning, but I guarantee you, if you do it, if you're consistent, because that's another big problem with men, if you're consistent, she will follow suit. It's all proactive and it's all biology.
See, guys, you weren't sure there was an answer to that question. I've been married for 27 years. I did not have an answer. Now I have a perfect answer in the last 2 minutes of a ball game. Wow. Right? That just tells me I got another 27 more years in me. So there Solanda, tell everybody how we will, of course, put all this information in the show notes. How can they get a hold of you, your website, or how can we find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. The website is the easiest. Just going to the website, sulondasmith.com, SULONDA Smith.com. There you have an option. You can click work with me button, which we'll chat. It's no charge to see if I can help. And either you can figure out if there's anything else on the site that can work for you. Like I have 12 scripts, like scripted scripts, pre-made scripts for men. And
Grab
if you're
those
not
scripts,
in,
guys.
I know, right? Yeah,
Grab
general
those
scripts.
scripts.
Hey, this is the prelude, right, to really getting things in order. And if not, I'm always on IG at Sulonda Smith. You can send me a DM. But yeah, I'm pretty much, you can easily get in touch with me.
There
Yeah.
you go. What an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the True Man podcast. We had a great
Oh,
time today.
this was a pleasure. I love the work you're doing with men. And thank you so much for this invite. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
You too.